The Navajo Tale in the Beginning is brought to you by Not a Prophet org, the place on the internet to find spiritual guidance powered by artificial intelligence. The gods made the promise that they would never be seen or talked to by the earth people. People were never to see the gods or angels again. You will see us, but we will be flowers, grass, plants, trees, rocks, earth, lightning, and everything upon the earth. These will show you that we are still with you. All the Navajo, therefore, pray to all of these, for they represent the gods themselves and are not the gods. This was told to the people at this time. When it rains and there is nothing showing on the ground, plants and flowers appear. These are the gods themselves. Anything that grows represents the gods. Birds, stars, clouds, rain are all gods. Some of the gods went back to Black Belt Mountain, Cisnagini, and some went to the mountain by Crown Point Mountain, some to the other 6 mountains, and still lesser gods into the other mountains. Of the earth, any place where there are black stripes on the earth is found represents talking God. Water running out of the earth also represents him. Some of the gods went into all kinds of trees. F.G. would not tell the names of the gods, and where they went for, he felt he would lose his power as a medicine man. A man who was not a medicine man would have no power to lose and thus could tell. These trees move and act as if they were alive. After all this had happened, all of the gods left and said, "We will never see each other again." After the twin had finished talking to his mother, he did not stay for the sing. He went back to his home at Reversible Mountain, and he and his brother went towards Williams, over where Prescott copper mine is now, to change into rocks. There are 2 rocks that look like the twins at this place now. The souls, spirits of the twins are still in these rocks. They have all their power there, and can hear the prayers of the earth people. If the world changes, they will come back to life and destroy all the evil, like before. The twins got their power from the sun, and will keep it until more troubles come upon the earth. Should the world change, the twins, White Bead Woman, and all of the other gods will return to earth. All of the gods taught the twins certain powers to kill all of the evil upon the earth. The gods had equal power, but all in different ways. White Bead Woman was taught in the same way as the twins were later. The reason the war twins won the wars with their enemies is the same reason the United States always wins their wars. The war twins are on the good side. If the Navajo were with the Russians or Germans, they would have been the ones who would win the wars. The Navajo speech was used in the Pacific, and the people learned the Navajo had the power, and that is why they were used to help the Allies. White Bead Woman went out to the sun's house that was in the sea. Some medicine men say she traveled on foot to the west, but she is a god and does not travel in this way. The house of the sun was sitting on the ocean, but was not an island. Sometimes people see it, but not all of the time. It was made of turquoise, white bead, jet, and oyster shell. White Bead Woman looked at the house and blew a rainbow spectrum to the house. She got on it and rowed to the house on the ocean. Nowadays we have boats like this house, according to what the house of the sun did. Ships have rooms, beds, and all the things that the house of the sun had. The sun's house is like a submarine, and sinks sometimes into the sea, and that is why you cannot see it. White Bead Woman reached the sun's house in the evening. The sun was glad to see her, and he laughed and kissed her because of his happiness. Everything was in the house that she needed. The house was made as follows. The floor of the middle room was made of oyster shell, polished like marble. The walls were also of oyster shell. To the east room, the floor and walls were of polished white bead. To the south were floors and walls of turquoise. To the west there was again a room of oyster shell. In the last room, to the north, were black jet walls and floor. This house was like the sun's house to the east. This house also had clouds on all of the walls. In the middle room was a white male and female cloud on the wall. To the south was a blue male and female cloud. To the west was a yellow male and female cloud. Upon the north wall was a black male and female cloud. In this house were also seen the mortar and pestle in the floor, and the many flints on the walls. After White Bead Woman had been there 4 days, she began getting old age, about 400 years old. If White Bead Woman had not gotten old at this time, it would not have been possible for old age to come about now. After these 4 days had passed, she went into the east room, and when she came out, she was younger. After going into each of the rooms and finally coming out of the last one to the north, she was again a young girl. Even today, she gets very old every 4 years, and she has to go through this procedure. Because of the 4 rooms, she will get young every 4 years too. First man and first woman live at the east in the sun's house, and they, too, get old every 4 years. They, too, must do the same as the White Bead Woman. All the other gods became old every 12 years, and when this happens, they all come together. There is a meeting place which is at another black mountain on the other side of Hallbrook, called Woodruff Butts, or Txoz Hatchek Ioganek Xwi Zo. These gods have a meeting there every night to talk matters over. Anyone who wants to can hear these gods. These gods, unlike the others talked about, become young every 12 years. They too have a house so that when they get old, they can go through it and become young again. The sun also gets old like the other gods, and has to go through his house so that he will get young again. White Bead Woman spent most of her time in the middle or center room. It was at this time that she got the name of Changing Woman, or woman, who changes. The house to the east is made the same as the one to the west. The sun's other wife lives there. The story now continues on to the east from Mount Whitney with the 14 people. The people came out towards their ancient lands with the male and female bear, male and female big snake, male and female thunderbird, male and female wind, male and female mountain lion, and male and female wolf. The job of these animals was to protect the people from any evil or harm. They were pets to the people. These people were trying to make pets or dogs out of the wolves as they traveled along. When they came to Williams, they met some arrow people in human form. They fought with these arrow people, and when the 14 people were about to be beaten, they turned to the bears and asked for help from them. The bears began to fight and to kill all of the enemy. Victorious, the people continued on to the west of San Francisco Peaks. There they found a spring where there are 2 mountains together. This place was called where they spent a night with the bears. There are 2 stories here which come out from this story. One goes to the loop, and the other goes through Tuba City, Arizona. The one that goes along the loop is a male story, and the one through Tuba is a female story. There is a different version of each story according to the direction. There is a flat mountain on the end of San Francisco Peaks. This mountain is Chipped Off Mountain, or Zil Kayelkel. The lions were always behind, and the people finally left them there. The 2 mountain lions wore out their paws, and they were told, "That is where you are going to stay from this time on. You will be used in the future times by the earth people. Your skin will be quivers, your claws shall become necklaces, and your fat shall be used for medicine." The people continued along the top of the mountains, and one person was carrying the big snake. The man got tired and let the big snake go on the ground. This snake escaped, and it is still living in the lava rock, but no one has seen it. Sometimes he will be seen in the future time, it was said. The people also told the male big snake he would be used in the future. It was the male snake that was left there, and the female was carried on. If people do not have corn pollen, it can be shaken off of a big snake, or bear, thunder, tornado, or wind. This was to be the purpose of big snake, and this pollen was to be used in the future time. Some medicine men use this type of pollen for certain rites. The claws of the wolf and mountain lion are used in the same ways. The travelers went on and crossed at Tuba Wash, near the Colorado River, and went across Cameron. Lava Rock by Cameron shows the place they crossed the Colorado River. The people got a drink at the spring, Black Spring, on the other side of Cameron, and went on to Shadow Mountain. Long ago there used to be tiny dogs barking in that spring. F.G. does not know why. All the people decided to spend a night at Shadow Mountain. They had come to Willow Springs after Shadow Mountain. At the game corral at Shadow Mountain there is a spring called Hard, Grounder Round. The spring, or TX Oacute BEXWI Escon. They went to Willow Springs to the north side of Tuba City. and then on to the northeast of the Hopi Reservation at Monkopi. They followed along where the highway to Tuba is now towards White Mesa. From White Mesa, they went to a spring on the east side called Cover Dup Spring, or Txoaqki Ashachikje. They continued on to Red Lake and then to Cow Springs and towards Shanto. While they were going towards Cow Springs, 2 captured arrow children began playing. The children were eating wild onions and plants as they went through this country, and this is why they were behind. At Shanto, the wanderers waited for the 2 children to catch up with them. The travelers said, "We will wait. We have 2 children to come." One person went back to get the 2 children. He could not find them and came back and told the people they were gone. He looked for tracks and found some leading towards Red Lake. At the road to Red Lake, there is a hump along a flat area. When the man went around this hump, he saw 2 children going to Red Lake, and so he ran after them. He came around the point of the hill and got into the open and saw the children going into the rocks. These 2 children became the elephant's feet. The first one was the boy, and the next one was the girl. The boy was from the Water, Coming Together clan. The girl was of the Edge Water clan. All of the leaders or heads of the clans carried canes as they walked along. There is another story which also tells of the travels of the 14. The White Bead Woman made the different clans when the people were first made. They were given their names by her. The first 2 people to be made were called along the Mountain Clan. Their pet was to be the male and female mountain lion. This is the reason why the Navajos of this clan are heavy set and have stub noses. This clan had a turquoise cane which they carried with them. The people created from the back of White Bead Woman were called the Mud Clan, having as a mascot a male and female bear with the leader carrying a white bead cane. The people created from the left hand of White Bead Woman became the Near the Water clan, having a pet male and female big snake and carrying a cane made out of dark oyster shell. The people from the right hand of White Bead Woman were called the Bitter Water clan with a pet of a male and female thunder bird and carrying a jet cane. The people from the left foot were called Many Goats clan with a pet male and female wind god and carrying a cane out of red stone. Sailchi, the informant's first statement was that these people of the left foot carried no cane. On later discussion, the sentence was changed as above. The reasoning behind this is not known for certain, but in all the available versions of the creation myths, there are 12 people created, with but 4 leaders and 4 canes. The people created from White Bead Woman's right foot were called the Black Sheep clan, having a pet male and female wolf. These people had a cane of different kind of oyster shell, called very white oyster shell. On the way back to the original land of the Navajo, there was much water found along the way. As the different people set out from the White Bead Woman, they took along their pets with them. They met and captured some arrow people, Kadaine, as has been explained before, and killed the rest. The clan that did this was the Bitter Water clan. The 2 posts or elephant's feet were a boy and a girl from the arrow people. It was not the boy or girl who had received all of the power that got lost, but these captured arrow people that turned into rocks. The boy and girl were trying to escape and go back home to their own people. The home of some of the gods was at Shadow Mountain. They were to have had a fire dance when they arrived at night. There are 2 stories here. One is as correct as the other. One goes like this. Near this mountain there is a gully with rocks all around it, for it was an antelope corral. Later it changed into a mountain. This is where the gods caught antelope for meat. There were 4 ways to get into the corral from the 4 directions. The other story is that this mountain is a hogan. Gods now have their home in Shadow Mountain. There are trees on top of Shadow Mountain where the gods dried meat. There is also a flat rock to dry meat upon at Shadow Mountain, so the story goes. There are, then, the 2 stories, one which tells about the hogan and the fire dance, and the other about the catching of the antelope by these people. There is also a rope that changed into a rock there. The headman sat inside of the hogan gathering power to round the antelope up. When the people went hunting the heads of the deer, and the buckskins were put on the people, and they were thus disguised and were able to kill the animals. The power is lost to man to gather antelope and deer now as it was done in the old days. On the journey towards Shadow Mountain, there were 14 people now, the 12 made by White Bead Woman, and the 2 children stolen from the east. At Red Lake the first man created, who was the head man, stuck his cane into the ground and found that he was close to water. The water was close to the top of this hole. One of the men said, "The water is close." The man who said this got the name of the Close Water Clan. The people continued on past Shanto, and on past the west side of Kayenta, and on to where the hill drops down, which is called Sloping Hill, or letter 1F 9D Alkaid. At a spring below the hill, they built a dam using a rock for a wall. This was done for mud was coming down the hill because of the extra water. The place was muddy, and they laid rocks on the bottom of the spring so they could get clear water. As they continued on, the second man put his cane into the ground and pulled it out. Water came out, and it was salty and muddy. A man said, "It is muddy and salty." This man was given the name of the Muddy or Mud Clan. The whole place was getting muddy, and the ground was like quicksand. There was a wall built using large rocks by all 14 people. This was so the water would not go all over and get everything muddy and become like quicksand. The people spent several years at these different places. The wall that was built looks as if the cement between the rocks has handprints from these people. While they were so busy making the dam, the pet female big snake disappeared. After the snake disappeared, she went to rock. That steals or Sayanihi. This she-snake went on towards Shanto and got a drink at the spring called Shanto, and which is 1 mile above where the trading post is now. She went on to Kaibito, where there is a window rock on the point of White Mesa. This was made by the snake. A man was sent out to bring her back. As this man came over the hill at Shanto, the female snake was going over White Mesa. He saw the reflection off of her back. This man ran towards the top of White Mesa, and then saw her going over Red Mesa. When he got to Red Mesa, he saw the snake going to the northwest of Red Mesa. When this man got on top of Red Mesa, he saw her go towards Zilnane's letter 1, 9, B Jai, which was to the northwest. He tried to run after her from Red Mesa to the northwest, but before he could get on top of the hill, she slowly changed into a mountain. As she went along, she got longer and longer, and finally became what is known today as Crooked Mountain. All of the changes from people and animals into stone or mountains were done by themselves, for they had this power. When this man got to Crooked Mountain, he could not find the snake. He talked to Crooked Mountain and found the mountain was the female snake. The Snake Mountain told him that in the future all of the things which had been changed into rocks and mountains would change back into whatever they were before. This was to happen when the world changes or comes to an end. When the man went back to the people, he told them what happened, and so they moved on. How many years they stayed there is not known. The people went along a path where the highway to Flagstaff is now. There is a gap on this side of Kayenta near McDonald's trading post in Monument Valley. It was at this time that these people divided into 2 groups. Some went to Batatikan, where they were stationed at where the ruins are, Bitx Atadi Kin. The other group went on to Kayenta. At this time they started to irrigate with the water from the river at Kayenta. At that time there was water in the river. Some of the people went west to Kayenta, near Wild or Fierce Spring. The group was growing quite large by this time, for there were many children by now. There were the men, women, and children of the original 12, plus the Arrow people who had been captured. Some of the people were told to live at Fierce Spring forever. The other group went near the north of Kayenta, where there is a black post. They call this post many, Hair Atani. The people got the name because there was a tanning place where the hair was left behind, which was near Black Post. There is much arguing about the story at this point. These people were still there at Aljato, which means moon, water, near Monument Valley. Earlier, before this time, there had been no name for this spring. A woman went to get some water from the spring and looked in and saw the moon reflected on the water. Because of this, they named the spring Aljato. Soon after this, the people started to move eastward of Aljato. They traveled on until they came to a black rock, and a man wanted to stay there. He wanted to stay there forever, and because he had the power turned into a rock called Black Post. To the west of Denihatso was a man who also wanted to stay there forever, and so he also turned into a rock called Black Post. This also happened to the west of Denihatso, to a family who were behind all the rest of the people who were marching up ahead. The whole family became tired, and they stayed behind and turned into a rock which was later called Baby Rock. This rock looks as if a woman were carrying a baby on her back. There are many different women, men and animals who turned into rock during these early times. The people traveled on through Denihatso to Mexican Spring, Nakaito. West of Mexican Spring, there was a wash that is round because the water runs almost in a circle there. On they traveled from Mexican Springs to a round mountain this side of Farmington. This mountain is round, and it looks as if it were round in all directions, and as if it were turning around. Towards and beyond Shiprock were two black rocks at the spring. The people preparing lunch met two people there. One man went to get water from the spring and met a man and woman there. The strangers said to each other, "Hello," and the created Navajo got out his tobacco bag. When they had taken out their pipes, they found they both had the same shape and design. The man and woman also had a sack of tobacco that looked the same. Each recognized these things, and so they said they belonged to the same clan. Because of this, they were friends. The created Navajo was of the Bitter Water clan. The stranger was also a Navajo and of the Bitter Water clan. The stranger belonged to the other group of people who had gone the other way to reach their ancient land. These two men were then to be called Comingta, the water. Elo Pasture clan T letter 1 EF a breve pan L stroke TS letter 1 E 53 I macron because of their meeting. The people had lunch at this spring and went towards the place called Braced Rock TS letter 1 E 17 BNE AHXA. They lived here for quite a while and then left a turquoise stone man and woman, a jet man and woman, a white bead man and woman, and an oyster shell man woman there. They forgot these stone figures when they left. White men dug up the turquoise man and took it away, and that is why the rock almost fell down. White men were afraid and so braced the rock a few years ago. The carved turquoise was like a person and 3 to 4 inches tall. These figures were used as a power to protect the family, but some moved away and forgot them. Only the turquoise man and woman were used in this way. These people had these figures with them from the beginning. Also at this place was a large rock that these people held up by using a rock wall underneath it. The whites have now put a post under it to hold it up. When this rock falls, the world will change or end. This rock almost fell once during the war, and if it had, it would have been us who would have been beaten instead of the Japanese or Germans. The people continued to where there was a canyon which had a waterfall called TX O acute HX a breve D letter 1 EA FL tie high. This is north of Gallup, New Mexico. There were large holes in the rock caused by the water, and water laid in these holes. One man said, "There is a lot of water in there." They called this man the Big Water clan or TX O acute Coney. On the east side of Tohatchee there are 2 cottonwood trees, and that was where the 2 children were found that were taken to the west to learn from White Bead Woman. Here there is a hole about 3 feet deep and 12 inches in diameter. One of the people dipped a lot of water from here, and still much remained. This man said, "There is a lot of water." The people went there and found the children. These 2 children had been found in a cornfield, and the gods took them to the west. The created Navajo left the children here, and they told the children to tell the men and women all that had been taught to them by White Bead Woman. The group that left San Francisco Mountains met them here. The story from San Francisco Mountains is known to F.G., but this story must be told by another medicine man. Frequently this was the case in the storytelling when a story or name was so sacred that the telling of such secrets would literally drain the medicine man of a portion of his power. From this point on the people divided into many groups and fawned into the different clans. After the various people separated, many things happened. During the time of the wars with the other tribes, there was a woman from the Red House clan, Kin Lai Chai Hai, who was going crazy. She was crazy about men and doing many wrong things. She went south towards the Apache country. The Apache and Navajo were not one people at this time. This woman went to the Apaches and married one of the men of the tribe. She was pregnant before she married the Apache. After she lived with these people for a while, she had a baby girl. She took good care of the child until she got old enough to get married. The mother gave the girl to her husband, who was an Apache chief. The mother was going man crazy again, and the chief wanted to kill his wife because of this. Both the girl and her mother had children from this Apache chief. Between them, they had 5 girls and 4 boys. An Apache woman, the mother-in-law of these women, told them they were going to be killed. This Apache woman told them to run away to their clan. She said, "Run away and be careful, or you will be killed in the morning." This lady made a lunch for them to take on their journey. She was watching out for them every moment. The chief told her to watch the 2 women so they could not escape. The old woman hid the lunch and told them where it was. "Your children are Navajo, but the Apaches will do nothing to them, for they are the chief's children." Both of the women were playing around with other men. The old woman told them, "Try and be careful as you go towards the Navajo, and do not show footprints, for I am not going to tell them where you went. I am going to hide this knowledge from them. I will not tell them anything." During the night, the 2 women started out to where the lunch was hidden and began traveling that night. When day came, they hid themselves so they would not be seen. In the morning, there were groups of Apaches searching for them all around. At night, they started all over again and hid that morning again. In the morning, the Apaches came back and forth in groups again. Towards the end of the day, the men started going home again. The women in the morning started moving again, stepping on rocks. They traveled all night and hid when morning came. The next morning the Apaches were coming again, and about 3 o'clock they passed by the women, but they were hunting in groups of only 2 or 3 now. The Apaches went back, and the women started out again. At midnight the old woman could go no further. She had swollen ankles and knees, but she crawled on, going easy and crying as she went. They went on to the other side of Flagstaff, on to the east side of the mountains, San Francisco, on to the southwest of Winslow to Square Cactus Mountain or Xochitecani. The mother crawled on the other side of this mountain to show where the Navajo people were and where her people lived. She kept crawling and crawling to get to the top of the mountain. Finally, she got to the top, and she told her daughter which was the way to go. She was to go to the mountain near the loop called Midst of Butts or Changing Bear. She said, "There is a place called Killing Sheep Mountain or Debe-and-a-Cuchigan on the other side of this mountain." The mother told the girl where all of these places were to be found. "There are people living on the other side of Black Mountain in a place called Canyon de Chelly. That is where I came from. You have a grandfather and grandmother and other relatives there." She told the girl to go on. Don't try to wander off any place. Don't turn back. The girl was about 21 or 22 at this time. The old woman told the girl, "I will stay here and wait until my leg and ankle get well." She was really going back to her children, even if the Apaches killed her. Again she told the girl, "At this time of the year the Navajo hunt at Debe-and-a-Cuchigan. There is a river, the little Colorado River, and even if it is high, don't turn back. Use a stick to tell where the shallow parts are, and don't go into the deep water." The older woman had a little lunch left, so she gave it to the girl, and the old lady started crying. She told the girl for the last time, "Don't worry about me. Somehow you might get back to your people and be with them again." The young girl started out and stayed at Winslow. When she came to the river, she got a stick and did as she had been told. When she went across the river, she came to Killing Sheep Mountain. While she was on this hill, she saw some people riding horses in the distance at a place called Coyote Place or Mai Shije. One of the men saw her on the hill. They said, "There is someone walking way over on the top of that hill." These 2 riders came up to her, and they saw a girl sitting there. These 2 riders asked questions, but she answered only in Apache. At last they understood when she mentioned her grandmother and grandfather. They said it must be the woman who went to the Apache, and must be the woman called Running or Wild Woman. They started back with the girl and said, "We will find out about this when we get back." Tumay Shije. The people asked where she came from, and she said, Pine Canyon in Apache country. She told everything that had happened and mentioned her grandmother and grandfather. Some of her relatives were at this camp, and they all started back to Chinle and on to Canyon de Chelly. Later, the girl married one of the Navajo and started to raise more children. The people named her Red House Clan or Kinlinchini. She got her name by the canyon called Deschiniszan. That is where the Red Streak clan came from. The children left there are the same clan that live there today. About this time, other groups had their origin. This is a story about the Diné Nakalamdo Nai, or Eskimos. These are actually the Athapaskans to the north, but the Navajo believe them to be the Eskimos. This is also the story of the fire dance. One time there was a man who went to where there was a large crowd gathered. This man stayed for a while and married a woman in the dark. This woman had no flesh on her nose, for she was of the insect people. This woman told someone to go and tell her man, her husband, to come and eat Indian tortillas. There are like Mexican tortilla, as with corn husks, corn meal and meat which is boiled. This man did not want to come, for he was bashful of this woman. The fire dance took place shortly after this. There were many women like this, for they were born that way. They were insect people at that time, and all carried knives. All of the women wanted to cut this man into pieces for his not wanting his wife. However, the man was not killed. They began to dance inside the hogan and outside towards the north. They left the fire dance, and as they walked along, they said these things. From now on, when we face the south from the north, the people are going to freeze up. The winds will make them very cold. The wind was to come and go inside the insect people's noses and cause it to be very cold. If there is a cold north wind, it is caused by this. These insect people went north and became the Eskimos. They were told never to be seen again by the Navajo. The Navajo have seen them, and that is why the world has trouble like it has now. A long time ago at Blue House, Kindu Iliji near Kintxel, there lived a Navajo girl no one wanted. Her parents were dead, so she went to some neighboring Navajo to live by grinding corn and by cooking. Even though she was a good-looking girl, no one wanted her for a wife, so she wandered from hogan to hogan. One day she was out looking for food when she saw some smoke coming out of the ground. She went up to it and looked down into a small hole. Inside was an old woman spinning a web. The old woman looked up as she saw the shadow of the girl and said to her, "Come down to my house." The old woman was Spider Woman, or Nashe. The Navajo girl said, "The hole is too small," but Spider Woman said, "It is big enough." The Spider Woman blew at the hole 4 times. Each time it got bigger and bigger, until it was big enough for the girl to climb through. The girl sat by Spider Woman and watched her weave. Spider Woman had a long stick with a hole in one end, and she passed the thread in and out of the loom, making a blanket. She was making a design of everything in the sky. The Navajo were later told not to make use of this design in their blankets. Spider Woman also told the Navajo not to make the designs too fancy. After Spider Woman had finished weaving the blanket, she went up to the ground above and lowered the sun by blowing it to the west. She then asked the girl to stay the night as it was getting dark. As soon as the sun had gone down, Spider-Man came in. He asked where this girl had come from and why she was there. His wife told him that everyone hated her and she felt sorry for her. The girl stayed for 4 days and watched Spider-Woman make blankets. She learned the songs that went with the making of each part of the loom. There are songs still used today. One is used while spinning, called the spinning song, and the others while the tools are made. After she learned these things, she went back to the hogan where she was staying and asked for cotton of 3 colors, yellow, black, and white. At that time the Navajo had cotton and used coal, plants, blossoms, and sandstones of all kinds for the dye. The colors stuck because of the songs and prayers. The Navajo girl took the cotton and put up a loom different from Spider Woman, and like the Navajo used today, and then began to weave. She completed 1 blanket that day. The following day she began another blanket, and some Hopis came and watched her. Then they went home and made some blankets just like hers. The girl learned to make all designs, birds and animals. The Hopi learned how to weave from the Navajo. The girl was told by Spider Woman that she ought to know the songs in order to go to the extreme and make all of the designs. Spider Woman taught the girl all the songs and prayers. Spider Woman chose weaving for the Navajo in the beginning. She told the girl to leave an opening for the home of Spider Woman, just the same. Nowadays women do not know the songs and do not leave the openings. In the early days the Navajo knew how to weave simply, but did not know how to make designs. They were picking these designs up, but hostilities began with the Utes, and letter 1E53, Mexicans, Nekai, and other tribes. Each of these groups were stealing from the Navajo. The Navajo forgot the designs and the Pueblos took over. First woman taught the Navajo how to weave. She taught them to learn to weave in the first world. Down below they learned to weave a beautiful design skirt, which was below the knees. The Hopi took over and made it shorter. At this time it was made from cotton. When they got on this earth, the people started raising sheep, and soon used wool for weaving. The Hopi learned to weave with the various designs just like they do now. The carrying basket and the water bottle were learned from Thunder God, I letter 2, C, 7 and symbol 3, 1, 3I. Now it has been taken away by the Comanche and other tribes. The Navajo learned this from the Thunder God. He had a water jug and they copied it from him. In the sand paintings underneath the Thunderbird are water jugs represented. The Thunderbird represents the rain and represents the clouds carrying the rain. There was once a man who was a great gambler. He was very lucky at winning many things. He was called Earth Winner or NIXWIL stroke by high. After a time of being very lucky, he began to lose everything he had won. He talked too much about what he had and whom he had gotten it from. All of the people decided it was not fair for someone to talk like that, so they took a black bow and put it on his tongue and cut it out. People put his tongue on backwards, and the man began to mutter a new language. They put him on an arrow and shot him to heaven, and he kept mumbling all of the time. When he was shot into the air, he said, I will be back someday to settle with you. When this man got to mid-heaven, he met Bigo Black, Bigo Blue, Bigo Yellow, Bigo White, and Bigo Silver living up there. These Bigos asked him, Where did you come from? He said, I am coming from below where the earth people live. They put me in bad shape for they cut out my tongue and put it in backwards. I want you to make another rhino. At one time they used to eat the surface people. The Bigos fixed him a rhino, but when they said, Bigo Rhino, the figure turned into a cow. This cow began to moo and soon had a long horn. Bigos said to this man, You will live on this in future days. The man said, I want you to make a fierce bear like the one who ate people on earth. They used to eat surface people. I want you to make this. Again the Bigos fixed a figure and said, Bigo Bear. And this figure turned into a hog and began to grunt. The Bigos said, That will be your food, and that is what you will live on. The man said again, I want you to make me a flying monster eagle. It used to eat surface people. The Bigos made another figure, and when they said, Bigo Eagle, it turned into a chicken, a rooster. The Bigos said, That is what you are going to live on in future days. After all of these things had happened, this Death Bigo said, I want you to make a walking rock. They used to eat earth surface people. The Bigos made one and said, Bigo Walking Rock, and the figure turned into a wagon. The Bigos told the man, That is what you are going to live on in future. At last the man said, I want you to make me 2 antelopes who used to eat earth surface people. The Bigos made this last figure, and when they said, Bigo Antelopes, the figures turned into a mule. The Bigos told the man, That is what you will live on. All the Bigos told the Death Bigo, We did not make anything for you. We tried, but they just turned into certain animals and things. This man and his goods were sent away. They all started off and came down in the land to the east, and that is where they live. Europe, the descendants of this man are thought to be Spanish. The Pueblos and some Navajo believe they got the sheep and horses from these Spaniards. The Navajo had sheep over here, which had long, curly black, brown, and white wool. They also had goats of all kinds and horses and small mules. The big mules, sheep with rough, heavy wool, and the chickens came from overseas. Coyote God at the time. Coyote danced to make the corn grow. The story of the great god Coyote commences. This is where Coyote first used his power given to him by the gods. At a Yebash, Yebichai, the people will dress up a poor man to look and act like Coyote. First man told him to do many things. The other gods had the power, but they did not have the knowledge. First man and first woman were jealous of others trying to grow corn and did not give them the knowledge to grow corn. They sent Coyote to go and make the corn grow. First man and first woman are themselves not to do such things, but they will have a hand in such things and send Coyote as their representative. Towards the end of the life of Coyote, he became almost mad with his power, and it was taken from him because of this. After Coyote got the pollen from the corn, he went to White Rock, staying in the open. He walked along to where this was and found many animals there, especially prairie dogs. He wanted something to eat. Especially prairie dogs, he said. I wish it would get cloudy. I wish the clouds to spread all over the place, and they did. He said, I wish it would begin to rain a few drops, for I am too hot. Anything he wanted to say would happen. Coyote got the power, which he had from supreme sacred wind, White Bead Woman, the sun, talking God, Kaling God, the moon, the earth, the heaven, the darkness, the dawn, the blue twilight, yellow twilight, white twilight, and all the wind people, the four main gods and the lesser ones. Coyote then wished, I wish it would get wet under my feet and water come from beneath my toes. This too happened. I wish it would get muddy, and the water began to rise. When it gets up to my ankle, then to my knee, then halfway up to my body, then my back, water comes around to my neck, my ears, and the water will come up to my head. Each of these things he wished. Coyote then said, I wish that the water would overflow on me. With this he began to float, and the water took him to where the skunk got his water. This, too, Coyote wished for. Coyote floated to the place called where the twigs are washed off the side. As he waded along came a skunk with a water bucket, and the cup rattled inside the bucket. He told the skunk his plan and promised to share the meat. He told the skunk to get 4 wooden clubs and put some seeds from a plant on Coyote's ears and rear to make him look as if he were dead. Coyote told Skunk, when they are dancing, hit me with a stick, but not too hard, whenever they stop dancing. Don't let anyone else do this. If they hit me, they will hit too hard. Coyote was planning to get lots of food. Skunk did as Coyote told him and went into the camp telling all the animals that Coyote was dead. No one would believe the skunk, but everyone was curious. They decided to send out someone to see if the story were really true. Rabbit was sent out to where Coyote had died. The rabbit looked at him from a distance, for he was afraid, but he saw the seeds and went back and told everybody that Coyote was dead. If these seeds had not been put on the carcass of Coyote, there would be no one who would decay. In these later days, the second time a deer was sent to see if what had been said by Rabbit before was true. The deer did the same as the rabbit had done. Always the people sent someone who could get away from Coyote quickly. This story will cause it to rain or snow. F.G. will not tell the important name of the thunder that will make it snow or rain as Coyote did in this story. Antelope went and all happened as it had before. The mountain sheep went and did the same things and said as before, it is the truth. Everyone back at camp argued and said it was or was not the truth. Once again they sent someone, and this time it was a cottontail. He was told to look everywhere and look at Coyote very carefully to see if he were really dead. It is true, he is dead, Cottontail said when he returned. This story is part of the emergence myth, and not a fairy tale. At this time Coyote had all of his power, while during the fairy tales he is only a witch. F.G. The cottontail had put his head to Coyote's heart, but the fur was blowing back and forth because of the wind. It was hard to tell if he were really dead or not. The cottontail crawled all over Coyote's body. All the people did not care if Cottontail was eaten up, and that is why they sent him. All of the animals, the gophers, mice, squirrels, and all of the others, finally gathered and began to beat their drums. The drums were made out of clay pots with water inside and buckskin over the top. All the animals had a happy dance around him. They knocked a piece off the edge of the pots as they celebrated. If they had not, they would have been killed. If this were to happen at a squaw dance, it is an omen of evil. They were too busy hitting the drum and hit too hard. That is why it was broken. The drumming was driving all of the witchcraft and evil away, and that is why it was done. When there is a squaw dance, there is a basket turned upside down and hit like these people did. The skunk was saying, "Dead witchcraft," as he hit Coyote. All of the people danced in a 4-row circle. The skunk hit Coyote with a club every time they stopped dancing. The skunk said to the people, "Give me a chance to sing, and everyone look up in the sky and don't look, but close your eyes." Skunk put his rear end in the sky and put his scent bag into the circle 4 times. The 4th time he blinded them with his protection. The skunk got his poison at the gambling cave. and it was given to him for protection at that time. This is the reason for Skunk having his poison, for if this had not happened, there would be no blind people now. Coyote jumped up and said, "This is no time for witchcraft to die. Who ever heard of witches dying?" He took his 4 sticks buried underneath him in the dirt, and using 2 of them, started killing all of the big animals. The skunk had the other sticks, and tried to kill all of the little animals. Some of the fleeter animals escaped, however. The animals that were killed were gutted, and a fire was built. After the fire died down and only the hot coals were left, the animals were pushed inside. Resting after their work, Coyote thought of a way to cheat Skunk out of his share of meat. So he said, "Skunk, while we are waiting for the meat to cook, let us have a race to give us a good appetite. The one who was to get back first won the most animals." They decided upon a distance to run when Coyote again said, "Skunk, you go first, for you are not as good a runner as I am." So off Skunk went, and when he was out of sight, he went to a badger's hole, climbed inside, and pulled brush over the top of it. Pretty soon he heard someone running. As he peeked out, he saw Coyote running by with a firebrand of cedar tied to his tail so he could run faster. After Coyote had gone by, Skunk went back to the fire and took out all the large animals. These he carried to the top of a large rock, and later put all the small ones back in the fire to fool Coyote. After Skunk had finished, Coyote came back and laid down to rest. He lay in the shade with sand on his chest to cover him and to cool himself off. After he rested, he poked around for the cooked animals, but only found a mouse which he threw to the east. Each time he pulled out a small animal, he threw it in one of the 4 directions, one to the south, then west, and finally to the north. The tails of the large animals had been left in the coals so that he found these, too. As he pulled on the tails to pull the animals out of the fire, the tails came out. These animals are really tender. Coyote thought, very tender. At last, when he found nothing, he looked around and saw the tracks of the skunk. Now Coyote knew what had happened, and he begged Skunk for food, but Skunk merely laughed. Coyote was still very hungry, so we went back and ate all the small animals. As he ate, Skunk dropped the bones from the large animals down on Coyote's head. After his terrible experience with Skunk, Coyote traveled on and soon came to a hogan. There he met a girl called Changing Bear Maiden, Sihachakaik Shashna Lambda Hay. He looked at her and right off said he wanted to marry her. She told him that the one who married her would have to be able to be killed for 4 times. He went outside after this and hid his heart and circulatory system in the brush. When he came back into the house, he said, "I can be killed 4 times and I will still not die." She killed Coyote with a club and took his body outside and threw him away from the house. After she entered the hogan, he came in behind her. She killed him for the 2nd time and then did the same with him as before. Once again, as she went into the house, he was following her. The 3rd time she cut him into 2 pieces and threw him outside, but he was still alive. The 4th and final time she cut up his body into little pieces and ground it up on a grinding stone. As she took the pieces outside, she threw some to the east, some to the south, some to the west, and the rest she threw to the north. Once again Coyote came back into the hogan and said, "Now you are mine." There was no regular Navajo ceremony for this marriage, but it was binding anyway. Later, Coyote and the girl had intercourse in the hogan. Just as they had finished, Changing Bear Maiden's 5 brothers came back from a hunt with much meat. When they came into the hogan, Coyote hid behind some goods. The fire was burning, and they said, "It smells like Coyote has been urinating on this. Throw it out and bring in more wood." The brothers went out and cut some wood outside and brought it back. They built a fire, but they could still smell Coyote urine and said, "Coyote has been around here." Again they went out and cut some branches higher on the tree, but the same things happened as before. Higher and higher on the tree they went, and finally on top of the tree they got more wood. They built a fire 4 times. During a ceremony, there should be 4 new fires built with wood from branches on a tree, because of this. At last Coyote jumped out and said, "What were you saying, my brothers?" In law. The men did not want Coyote for their brother, but they could do nothing about it. The next day the boys got ready to go hunting again. They did not want to take Coyote, but had to take him because he had married their sister. They soon came to a canyon where the boys said a prayer, and they crossed over the canyon using a rainbow. Underneath in the canyon lived the spider people. The boys crossed over this canyon and went down into another canyon where it came to a point. As they hunted, they had much luck and killed many mountain sheep. At this time the mountain sheep had 2 rolls of fat where their horns are now. Coyote wanted the fat, for it was a delicacy. The brothers told him no. Coyote kept asking and finally gave up and said to the fat, "Change slowly to bone, to bone, to bone, to bone." And it did. After hunting all day, they had all the mutton they wanted. After they had cleaned all the sheep, the brothers had a sing and pushed the meat together into a small bundle the size of your thumb. They told Coyote as he left for home, "Whatever you do, do not open this package." They gave him the song or prayer to sing to get over the top of the canyon by using the rainbow spectrum. These brothers were gods, for they could go over rainbows. When Coyote had left them and was a short distance away, he set the bundle down and opened it. It began to grow and grow. Soon it was too heavy to lift, so he just picked up a part of the meat and took it to the rainbow. He said the prayer, but it would not work, for he had disobeyed, and thus was punished. He walked along the edge of the canyon to try and find a way out.